Right. And I just want to make sure that it's the... Oh dear, whoops. I just want to make... that's what I wanted to do. Right, that's okay. Okay. Right. Got Rabbi Gottlieb there for a moment. Never mind, that's fine. And we go back to Zoom. Right, got it. Okay, wonderful. So yes, here we are on Lag BaOmer. We've still got a little bit of daylight here, so we're still there. All right. So Bezrat Hashem, we'll see how far we get. Now then, start off with that tefillah. It's always a good place to begin. And I need to share my screen. That's it. Share screen. That's it. Okay, very good. ריבון העולמים ואדוני אדונים, אב הרחמן והסליחות, מודים אנחנו לפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו, בקידה בשטח הוויה שקרבתנו לתורתך ולעבודתך עבודת הקודש, ונתת לנו חלק בסודות תורתך הקדושה, מה אנו ומה חיינו, אשר עשית עמנו חסד גדול כזה. על כן אנחנו מפילים תחנוננו לפניך, שתמחול ותסלח לכל חטאותינו ועוונותינו, ואל יהיו עוונותינו מבדילים בינינו לביניך, וכן יהי רצון מלפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו, שתכונן את לבבינו ליראתך ולבבך, ותקשיב אוזניך לדברינו אלה, ותפתח לבבינו הראל בסודות תורתך, ויהיה לימודנו זה נחת רוח, לפני כיסא כבודך כרך ניחוח. ותאציל עלינו אור מקור נשמתנו בכל בחינתנו, שיתנוצצו ניצוצות עבודך הקדושים, אשר על ידם גלית דבריך אלה בעולם, וזכותם וזכות אבותם וזכות תורתם ותמימותם וקדושתם, יעמוד לנו לבן לקשר בדברים אלו, ובזכותם תראה עינינו במה שאנו לומדים, כמאמר נעים זמירות ישראל, גל עיניי והביט הנפלאות מתורתך, כי אדוני תן חוכמה מפיו דעת ותבונה, יהיו לו רצון ימי פי, ויגון ליבי לפניך, אדוני צורי וגואלי. Amen. Can you rtzon?
Amen.
Now, we're going to start off with something a little bit unusual. I was listening to a talk that Rabbi Gottlieb gave in the Tanya. It was broadcast on YouTube. And I was so blown away by this shiur, I have to say, that I began to transcribe it so that one day I'll be able to hopefully translate it into English. But I've got as far as I've got, and it was about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and not so much the historical idea, but much more about how we can relate to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai in our own lives today. And like I say, I was totally blown away by this. So we're going to start off by the first part of his shiur, which I've already transcribed, and just look at it together. And of course you can comment and tell me what you think, because I found it quite extraordinary. So let me see if I can share the screen for that. That should be there. Right, here we go. And so I'm not going to read it in the Hebrew, because a lot of Hebrew here. I'm going to just sort of like look at it with my eyes and translate, and you guys can follow along with the Hebrew if you can read it, all right? Today, since it's Lag BaOmer, just imagine it's Rabbi Gottlieb talking, okay? Today, since it's Lag BaOmer, we'll talk a little about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. He actually gave this talk a few days before Lag BaOmer. The sages speak a lot about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and we need to understand that the souls reincarnate from generation to generation. And in the book of the Gateway of Reincarnations, Shar HaGilgulim, which is written, I think that's one of the books of the Ari HaKadosh, yes. It's written there that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was actually a spark of the soul of Moshe Rabbeinu. And the holy Ari was himself a spark from the soul of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And Rabbi Ashlag wrote about himself that the soul of the holy Ari incarnated within him. We've actually got a letter of Rabbi Ashlag to his father in which he states that. What do we learn from this? We learn from this that the Holy Blessed One does not neglect us, but in every generation he cares about us. And one of the ways he shows his caring is that he understands that we need instruction and we need teachers who can teach us the right way to go. So in every generation, the Holy Blessed One sends us different types of people to instruct us. But Rabbi Gottlieb said, we need to understand that the teacher is not just, an instructor like somebody who teaches sport, but the teacher not only gives us the information or the directions, how to do whatever we're trying to do, but he also gives us the strength and the energy to carry out what we need to do. All right? That is a true teacher. So we have to rely on the fact that within our generation, there are people who are also tzaddikim, and through them, we can actually receive not only the understanding of what we need to do, but also the power and the energy to do it. Well, how is that? He went on to explain further on, I'm not quite sure if that's a bit I managed to transcribe or not, that we are all one field of energy. All of us. We are all one field of energy. The Shekhinah is called the Knesset Yisrael, the collective soul of Israel, which means that what we do, what we put into that collective field, affects everyone. And the great teachers who are around us, even if we don't know them personally, are putting their energy into that collective field, and we can receive the energy and the instruction and the power to do what we need to do from the fact that we can rely on the fact there are tzaddikim in every generation who are here to inspire us and to give to us. So Rabbi Gottlieb carried on his talk by saying, we're going to look a little bit at the Holy Zohar, which of course is the great work that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai brought together. Did he actually, let's just, before we go into that, before we go into what he's saying here, did Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai invent the Zohar? The answer is no, he did not. Baal Sulam, Rabbi Ashlag, wrote a wonderful article in which he explains what the Zohar is. You have four aspects of Torah. You have Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Sod. All four aspects were given to Moshe Rabbeinu on Mount Sinai. All four of them were given. Not just the written Torah, but the oral Torah as well. Okay? And the oral Torah as well consists of the Drush, the Remez, the Drush, and the Sod. Okay? Now, the oral Torah was not written down. Okay? And it says in the Gemara what needs to be written is written and what needs to be spoken is spoken. And you're not allowed to write down what should be spoken. And that was, in fact, the rule. That was the Mishnah. That was the rule. Until we got to a stage where in Eretz Israel, the situation was so difficult that they were very afraid that the chain of transmission would be broken. This was at the period at the time of Rabbi Akiva. As you know, 24,000 pupils died. I'm not quite sure what that exactly means. And the Romans were physically in charge, and the situation was very, very, very difficult. So it was the main pupils of Rabbi Akiva at that time who took it upon themselves to bring together the oral Torah and write it down. And by tradition, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi collected the Mishnah, Rabbi Meir collected the Midrash, the Sifrei, and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai collected the Zohar and wrote it down. Okay? All right? So he's considered like the one who brings down the Zohar, and of course he couldn't have collected it if he hadn't understood it. But still, the Baal Sulam actually says that all the Tanaim knew the inner aspects of the Torah, all knew the Sod. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai had a particular aptitude that he was on the one hand able to understand it and to teach it, but on the other hand to make sure that it was hidden enough so that people who weren't worthy of it would not be able to use it in an unworthy manner. Okay? So he was an exceptional soul. So what does Rabbi Gottlieb wants further to go on and to understand, what does this mean? What does it mean for us, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai? He says, I want to look at the Zohar of the Holy Zohar in Parshat Vayechi. There it says that even if there's a spark of judgment, okay, this cannot enter into the conscious place of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Where Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is present, okay, this aspect of judgment cannot come in. We're not talking about a physical place. We're talking about the consciousness where Rabbi Shimon is present. There cannot be even a spark of judgment there. Okay? And Rabbi Gottlieb goes into it and he says, when the word is makom, okay? But we're not talking about a physical place. And going to, for example, many people go to Meron on Lag BaOmer. And the Holy Ari wrote that, of course, it's a proper thing to do, but it's only a type of skula, it's only a type of good thing to do for us. However, somebody like the Holy Ari, or the Or HaChaim HaKadosh, or even also, for example, the Ben Ish Chai, when they arrived to Meron, they could feel the high soul which is there. Okay, for ourselves, everyone feels what they feel when they go to, according to his inner work and according to his purity. Now, in different places in the Zohar writes about the name Shimon Bar Yochai. What does the word Shimon actually mean? What's the name Shimon? Shimon is from the language of shmi'ah, hearing, okay? Lishmoa et hametziot elokit Yisrael. Okay, to hear the reality of the God of Israel. Just as the children of Israel said before the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai, we will do and we will hear, Na'aseh v'nishma. What does shmi'ah mean? What does hearing here mean? It doesn't mean physical hearing, but it means grasping, understanding. The Gemara says that hearing means to understand, that we will be able to apprehend, to realize, to understand what God is telling us. We'll be able to have an experience of the light of God. Rabbi Gottlieb says he doesn't want to speak about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai from a historical perspective, okay, because he's not a researcher, he's not an academic, okay, But what he does want to do is he wants to understand what is the conscious space, what is the consciousness of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai that we need to attain. What does Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai give to us in our day and age right now? Okay? In what way can the consciousness of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai give to us a vehicle for us to also to receive the light of God? Okay? All right? How can it help us? That's what Rabbi Gottlieb is interested in. There's a place in the Zohar which says that, explaining the name Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who explains who Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was, according to his name. Okay, so we looked at Shmi'ah, hearing. Now it looks at it in another way. What is Shimon? It is Shem Avon, the name of sin. Huh? Okay, that's what it says. I looked it up. Okay, I wanted to see this for myself. And it does, it's true. The Zohar is actually saying something which seems to be the opposite of what we think. We think Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, all filled with light. But what does this say? Rabbi Shimon, Shem Avon, the name of sin. It's talking about him as if he's full of sins. That he's full of sins. And this is what we need to understand, that he was full of sins. However, it was through the fact that he was full of sins, he merited to hear God's name, to experience the light of God. That's what the Zohar says. It's a strange thing. It's a total surprise. I had to listen to this a few times. I've listened to this talk a few times because it really struck me so, wow, I thought. What does this mean? It's not at all how we imagine for ourselves that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was some kind of like an angel, pure, a rarefied angel, completely filled with light. That's not true. Because even if it really was like that, then what can he say to us? What have we got to do with angels? We live here in this world, in all the complications and the mess and the chaos of this world. And what we really need to understand is how we can utilize this world with all its complications in our lives and the difficulties of our lives, okay, in order to use the difficulties to connect with the Creator. Therefore, we need to understand what this Zohar is saying. Rabbi Shimon is the name of the sin. Wow. In another place in the Zohar says instead of Avon, written with an ayin, which means sin, it's written Aven. What is Aven? A wicked person. Poale Aven, the people who work wickedness, is wicked. Rashaim, wicked people. From this we need to understand that the truth is that we cannot merit to come close to God without sins and without wickedness. That's what we need to know. It's only through our mistakes, our illusions, our wickedness, our inner chaos, that we can actually merit to come close to God in the same way that Rabbi Shimon merited. Strange, huh? It's amazing. It actually reminds me, this is in brackets because not what Rabbi Gottlieb said, but it reminds me of a wonderful midrash, which I've always remembered and I've found one of the most helpful things that I've ever learned. And the midrash is a midrash of when the children of Israel were in the wilderness and they're heading towards Eretz Israel at some point in the 40 years, I forget which point exactly, and they're coming towards the king of Arad. And the king of Arad was very frightened by this whole idea of, this huge encampment of the children of Israel coming towards him. He'd heard what had happened at the Red Sea, that the Egyptians had drowned. He'd heard what had happened with the Amalekites. And Arad, a little place in the Negev, I don't think was any bigger in those days. And he was a bit freaked out. And so he said to his magicians, they all had magicians in those days, his counselors, what are we going to do? Can you do some magic against this Moses? And the magician said, well, we don't know what he looks like. We need to know what he looks like to be able to do anything. So, of course, in those days, they didn't have cell phones or anything, or photo cameras or anything. So he'd sent a couple of people who knew how to draw as spies into the camp of the children of Israel. And they made a sketch of Moshe Rabbeinu, and they brought it back to the king of Arad to show it to the magicians. And the magicians took one look at Moshe Rabbeinu's face, and they said he has a face of a murderer. That was the midrash. And I thought it was the most marvelous midrash I'd ever heard. I really mean it. I didn't think that Moshe Rabbeinu, I really thought about it a lot. I didn't think Moshe Rabbeinu had the face of a murderer because he killed the Egyptian. That was not murder. That was a correct action. Like if, God forbid, you see a terrorist trying to kill somebody, you don't think twice. You do your best to kill them or something. If you've got the wherewithal with you, if you've got a weapon, if you're somebody with a gun, you kill him. You don't somebody trying to murder somebody, you do your best. Okay, so that's not considered murder. So what does it mean? It meant that Moshe Rabbeinu had the potential of all the evil in him to the extent of murder, but he transformed it. He used that to come close to God. And this is the same idea here. Rabbi Gottlieb continues. He doesn't mean that a person needs to want to do sins. God forbid. All right? Or a person should commit sins. No. But we have the sin within us all the time because we have the will to receive for ourselves alone. All right? And so inevitably we make mistakes. We fall down, okay? By day and by night. We don't need to look for it, and we don't need to import it from outside ourselves, okay? But the reality is that we have in our nature, that basic nature of ours, our will to receive for ourselves alone, okay? And we need to actually use that as a means to come close to God, okay? So we don't need to use the sins. We don't need to use that potential in that sense of actually commit sins, God forbid. But we do need to accept that fact, okay? That we are in an environment, all of us, I think, in this modern world, an environment which mostly is consisting of people using their ego, the egoism, okay? Not an easy environment to live in. And we all get caught up with it one way or another. And we need to really understand that. And when we can really understand that, we can ask for help with it. Okay? And that's the key. If we try to whitewash it, okay, and you can't do anything with it, all right? But, Habal Taher Masayinoto, if a person recognizes the evil within him, he recognizes his evil potential within him, but then he can come to be purified, then he gets help. And then he can merit to the light of God. And he says, in fact, it isn't possible to merit the light of God any other way. The Torah was not intended for pure tzaddikim. The Torah was intended only for the wicked. And he says, this is what we really need to understand. That's why Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who reached the highest level that anybody could possibly reach, him and his companions reached the level of Mashiach. Mamash reached the level of Mashiach, which nobody else is going to reach until the real Mashiach comes. Okay? And that's why, but nevertheless, he was called Shimon, Shem Avon, because he recognized what was in him and used it to pray to God to help him and to lift it all up, okay, to get close to God. How do we know this? When Moshe Rabbeinu went on high to receive the Torah, the Malachei Asheret, the ministering angels, said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, wait a minute, you want to give the Torah to this human being? To this polluted, created being? Your precious Torah, which is all light? Give us the Torah. Give it to the angels. Give your glory to the heavens. Give us the Torah. The Holy Blessed One said to Moshe Rabbeinu, answer them. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, do you have a Yetzer Hara? Do you get angry? Do you have the temptations to steal? No, the angels don't have a Yetzer Hara. If you don't have a Yetzer Hara, what do you need the Torah for? It's we who need the Torah here in this world. We need the Torah because we need to know how to deal with our wills to receive for ourselves alone. Only people who have a Yetzer Hara, which is ourselves, we need the Torah. The Torah is for us to help transform our animal nature. It's not for people who are, angels. They don't need the Torah. Okay. So what does Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai come to tell us? We need to understand it's dafka when we fail, when we fall down, when we realize what we've got within us, then we can hear the name of God. And then it's called Yokai. What is Yokai? Yokai is life. The essence of life. Ki imcha makor chayim, ba'orcha nire'o. For with you is the source of life. In your light, we will see light. So from this, we can understand what was the tremendous value of Shimon Bar Yochai. Okay? To understand this value. The Zohar Kadosh actually goes over this issue in many different ways in order that we should understand this point, that on the one hand, our life is filled with sins, with all sorts of failures, different types of failures within the family, outside the family. All of us are filled with different angers or in our society, there's a lot of violence in society. Whichever society we're living in, the Western society right now is full of violence. The Gemara says, whoever is angry, it's as if he's worshipping idols. So if you just have to look at the news, we are all filled with anger. We're all filled with avodah zarah. Somebody can't say anything until he gets, it's just terrible what's going on. Okay, so we've got all this very negative stuff, all right, but we try to push it away, so it doesn't belong to me, I'm not part of it. But the truth is we are part of it. Why? Because Rabbi Gottlieb went on to say that the whole of humanity is, well, especially Am Yisrael, the Am Yisrael is one field of energy. We're all part of it, okay? So we share our good, we share our bad. This is also in the Gemara. You do one good deed, you have brought not only yourself, but the whole world to the side of merit. You do one bad deed, you brought yourself down, but also you brought the whole of the world down, okay? So we're all in this energy field together, all right? And if we look at the society around us, you can see many pain, much anger, much fear, and we're all filled with this very negative stuff. But we don't understand that it's this negative which itself can bring life, okay? It's like the compost, you know, what you get compost from. You get compost from the rubbish, which needs to rot and to break down, and then you get new life, okay? If you try to grow seeds without compost, you get very lifeless, tasteless vegetables, all right? You need the compost on the ground to really rot, okay? And that brings the life, okay? All right? So it's the negative. Why is it that the negative can actually bring us life? Okay, for two reasons. First of all, because the Yitoron ha'or nikar dafka mitoch ha'choshech, that there is a positive aspect to the light, that the light is seen more clearly when it comes from the dark. And the second thing is to actually understand that we really don't have the possibility to connect with the highest light without the darkness, okay? Because it's only when a person really knows and sees that he's in the dark, okay, can he actually call out to God to ask for his help, all right? And that's the connection, all right? Rav Gottlieb said the worst situation of all is a wicked person who thinks he's a righteous one. That's actually the worst situation, because he can't see where he really is. All right? But a wicked person who knows that he's wicked, that's good. Okay? The world is built on people like that. Why? Because all of us are a type of wicked in one form or another, in one way or another. Just we need to understand that, to see it and to realize it, not live in a fantasy, okay, that really everything is fine. I'm okay, you know. In a way, we need to be brave enough to go inside and see what there really is, and to accept our failures and accept our negativity, and be able to pray to God for it. And the prayer to God is actually the means by which we make a true connection. It's actually difficult to on the one hand, you know, Rabbi Gottlieb is telling us to do that, but on the other hand, it's actually very difficult to see our own negative stuff. Okay, and the truth is we actually need God's light, the godly light, to actually see who we really are. Because a person doesn't see his own issues. He's very good at seeing somebody else's. We're all good at seeing other people's, but we don't see our own. Why? Because we love ourselves. This is a natural love, that every person naturally loves himself. And there is a saying which says, Al kol psha'im t'chaseh ahava, on all the love covers all iniquities. Okay? And so you really need the light of God to be able to see who we really are. And then we can really see that we and being Jewish, really practicing Judaism, can actually be two opposite things. Because the summit of Judaism, the the ultimate of Judaism is love. Loving your neighbor as yourself and loving the Lord your God. And in the modern age, it's very difficult to actually reach this true expression of love. Okay? So, he went on to say, to talk about how can we really get close, all right? We need, first of all, to use our Holy Torah. Okay, the Holy Torah in the different ways that it teaches us, brings us close to God. It shines its light on us and helps us see who we really are and helps us turn to God, okay, to transform it. Okay? There's two ways. There's the Holy Torah and there's the way of suffering. Okay? Now, if we're wise, okay, we learn Torah, we try, we open our heart and to Torah and really try to learn Torah from a true place. Not from a sort of ritual thing, but really listening to the prayers and listening to the actual Torah itself. Then Bezrat Hashem, we can begin to see who we really are. And this was actually written in the commentary of Rabbi Ashlag in the Pticha L'Chochmat HaKabbalah. There's somebody once asked Rabbi Lev Ashlag, what does the light of Torah give us? What does the light of Torah give us? That we can see our will to receive for ourselves alone. And until we can see it and what damage it's doing to us, we don't have the ability to throw it away. That was the real issue. Okay? So it's to be able to see what we really have within us is we actually get, that's the light, that's what the light of Torah actually gives us. Okay? And then we can pray to God for help. One who comes to get pure, they help him. How do they help him? Through our holy soul. Okay, that was about so far as I've managed to transcribe properly. Okay, so we'll stop sharing there. Okay, and any questions before we move on to anything else?
Yedida.
Yes.
So that the different aspects of the Torah, you by reading it, by attempting to do the halakha, show you the aspects of yourself. So you can see yourself in the criminal activities in the Torah, or the halakha, the things that you're not doing to help your fellow man, or is that, like people say a lot, that the Torah is supposed to do whatever, but in what way is it doing it? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. Okay. I think there's two aspects. First of all, there is the actual practice. There's the actual practice of halacha, okay? Which is the Torah Tanigleh, the halachot, the different rules between ourselves and God and ourselves and our fellow man. But there is also the intentions. Why am I doing it? Am I doing it to gain something? Am I doing it just because I was brought up that way? Why am I doing it? If I'm really doing it because I want a better connection with God, I want to be able to serve him, I want to come to the aspect of love, okay, then the Torah will bring me this light, okay? But if I'm just doing it, what's called mitzvot Hashem melumada, just because social reasons, or just doing it because everybody else does, or something like that, then it doesn't do anything. You've really got to really want to come to God. And the Torah Be'emet, the more we try, the more we discover how we can't manage it. All right, actually. All right, how do we do Torah Lishma? How do we do Torah for its own sake? The more we try to do Torah for its own sake, the more we discover what our wills to receive for ourselves alone really are. The truth is, until we try, we don't see it. We think we're fine because of the natural self-love that covers our wills to receive for ourselves alone. But if we try to come to Torah mitzvot through the way of giving unconditionally, that's when we discover who we really are. That's when we find how hard it is. So one of the women who was at this shiur in Netanya, I didn't actually hear what she said, but I heard Rabbi Gottlieb's answer. And, you know, because on the YouTube or whatever, you don't always hear the questions. Okay. But she obviously said, you know, I fall down and it's so difficult to overcome my will to receive. And he said, no, we're not Superman, we're not Superwoman. Okay? When we discover what we have within us, the answer is to pray, to ask for help. That's the answer. He says that's how we make the connection. To discover who we really are, what we've really got is within us, and then to pray to God for help. Okay? And that makes the connection which Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai made such a connection that he reached the highest level that anybody can reach, because he recognized what was in himself and used it as like a crane, you know, to go straight up as an elevator, to use what's the negative dafka in order to make that connection with God. And from that place, he was able to bring this heavenly light down into the world. Okay. Any other questions? Well, I must say, I was blown away by Rabbi Gottlieb's talk. I really was, because it's a tremendous different understanding of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai than, you know, what we normally understand. So we've got another 20 minutes more or less. So the next thing I wanted to do today, Bezrat Hashem, I'll keep transcribing that and we'll see how far we get. But in the I'll make it into a podcast or something, hopefully. But in the meantime, one has to do what one can do. There is an explanation Rabbi Gottlieb made on the Idra, which is the traditional Zohar, which describes how Rabbi Shimon, left the world. And I think we might have learnt it together last year. Pretty sure we might have done. But Baruch Hashem, Rabbi Gottlieb very generously gave me a copy of a perush that he wrote on it. So I will do my best, okay, to be able to actually look at the Zohar and read it, translate it, and we will look also at its inner meanings. All right? So this is really a wonderful opportunity. Okay. Tana Bahu Yoma, the Rabbi Shimon Balistalka min Olma, Vahava Masadeh Miloi, it kansu havrai lebei Rabbi Shimon, Vahavu kamei Rabbi Elazar Berei, Rabbi Abba, Ushar Chavraya, Vahava Malia Beita. Zakif einoi Rabbi Shimon, Vachama itmalei Beita. בחר רבי שמעון ואמר, בזמנה אחרא כד הבינה בבי מראי, הווה רבי פנחס בן יאיר קמאי, ועד דבירנה דוכתי אוריכו לי עד השתה, וחד תבנה אסחה אישה מקמי, ומעלמין לא התפסיק, ומעלמין לא התפסיק, ולא הווה על ברנש אלא ברשותה. V'hashta chamina dit pasak, v'ha itmalei beita. We learnt that on the day that Rabbi Shimon wanted to leave the world, he organized his words and all the companions gathered by Rabbi Shimon. And there was before him Rabbi Elazar, his son, and Rabbi Abba and the other companions, and the house was full. Rabbi Shimon lifted up his eyes, and he saw that the house was full. Rabbi Shimon wept, and he said, when I was sick, there was also before me Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair. And until I clarified my place in the Garden of Eden, they waited for me until now. And when I returned, there was fire surrounding me, and this fire has never stopped, and no one can come into me except with my permission. And now I see that the fire has stopped, and the house is full. Now, what does all this mean? It sounds very mystical, okay? So Rabbi Gottlieb said we really need to know that all these issues that are talking here is actually talking about spiritual levels. So this is the commentary that I have. On the day when Rabbi Shimon wanted to leave the world, okay, and we need to mark the fact that it's Rabbi Shimon is the one who is deciding when he's going to leave, okay? When he wants, that will be the moment of his leaving. The tzaddikim really also have this power, you know? And what does he mean? He wants to leave the world. Because the world, the word olam, means what is hidden. Then it's a consciousness in which God's light is hidden. Whereas in the next world, God's light is revealed. So he wants to leave the consciousness where the light of God is hidden, and he wants to come to the next world where the light of God is revealed. And he says, and the house was full. What does it mean by the house? The word house is actually really a hint that we're talking about the holy Shekhinah, which was filled with all good. As it's written, with Chokhmah he will build his house. Rabbi Shimon lifted up his eyes, okay? The word eye in this Sfirot relates to the Sfirah of Chokhmah. So he lifts up his eyes, okay, means that he attained the light of Chokhmah to its fullest extent, but only in the way of giving. Then he says, where are we? Where does it say? He says he wept, that's right. Rabbi Shimon wept. Why did he cry? Okay? There are two aspects. First he wept, and then later on in paragraph 25, he laughed and he was happy. What does it mean? Okay? Crying is a code word in the Kabbalah, meaning a lesser spiritual level, and laughter means a greater spiritual level. Many times we find that first he cries. Very often you find this in the Zohar. Rabbi Shimon cries and then Rabbi Shimon laughs. Okay? Because you cannot come to a big level of spirituality if you don't start with a smaller one first. Like, as we learned for Pesach, every redemption has to be preceded by exile. All right? Same idea. When he was sick, it was like a type of exile. You have to have a type of negative, like darkness, in order to come to the positive, which is the light. Okay? Which is exactly what we learned earlier. You've got to find that negative within you in order to come to the light. All right? You've got to find the exile in order to come to the redemption. Then he said he was in front of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair. Who was Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair? Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair was, in fact, Rabbi Shimon's father-in-law. Okay? And he was of a similar spiritual level, as Rabbi Shimon himself. Okay? What else has he got here? He says here, until he clarified his place in the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden also is a hint of the spiritual level, which is the spiritual of the light of Chaya. So it's very, very, very high spiritual levels here. All right? And all those who are sustained from the soul of Rabbi Shimon had to wait until he clarified the spiritual level in order that they also would be able to receive from this spiritual level. And when he had done that work and he received this great light, then we found that there was fire surrounding him. Okay, and this fire never stopped. What does it mean? This is a fascinating idea. The idea really is that when the great light of God appears, it appears with judgments, with suffering. It doesn't appear just dumb, okay, with the potential of suffering around it. Why is that? Because when the great light of God is so beautiful and so sweet and so tempting, that if we were not aware of the dinim, of the potential suffering around it, we could just simply receive it for ourselves alone. That is exactly what happened with the breaking of the vessels. That has exactly happened with Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Okay? So, when the great light of God comes, that's actually the moment to be the most careful. Rabbi Baruch Shalom Ashlag teaches that the most dangerous time is not dafka when we're at the bottom calling out to God for help. It's actually when the light comes. Because when the light comes, it's such a relief. It feels so good. It feels so sweet that we're tempted to seize it with both hands and receive it for ourselves alone. And that is forbidden. Okay, that actually would be the worst thing of all. So therefore, it is surrounded by fire. We need to remember that if we receive it for ourselves alone, it will cause suffering. We will simply, we'll be worse off. Okay. All right. This is what Rav Gottlieb says, that at the moment when the light of God is revealed inside the human being, there is suffering, whose job is to remind him, to warn him that he should not come to the aspect where his wisdom is greater than his deeds, where he's just enjoying the wisdom and he doesn't bring it through into a practice of serving God, all right, or being kind to his fellow man. Okay? All right. There. Now, what else does he say? He said nobody came into him without permission. That it's impossible to attain the spiritual level of Rabbi Shimon unless he has got permission from his soul. Okay? What does it mean, permission from his soul? It means that a person needs to do the necessary preparation to receive the light of Rabbi Shimon. Okay, what does that mean? It means that we need to prepare by doing the work of giving, by doing the of giving unconditionally, which makes the garment with which we're able to receive the light of God, so that we don't receive it for ourselves alone. Okay. How are we doing? All right. This is actually the most important bit that I wanted to bring. Okay. But let's just carry on now with the straight Zohar, because the Zohar itself is also very beautiful. We'll do a couple more. Ad havu yatvi, patach einoi Rabbi Shimon, v'chama madachama, v'scha esha bebeita, nafku kolhu, v'ishtaru Rabbi Elazar berei, v'Rabbi Abba, v'shah havrai yatvu avrai. Amar Rabbi Shimon Rabbi Elazar berei, fuk chazi, ihacha Rabbi Yitzchak, da'ana ma'ar v'nalei, Eima lady sadeh miloi, v'yativ lagabei zakar chukei. When they were still sitting there, okay, sitting means not receiving the full light of Chokhmah. Standing means receiving the full light. Sitting means receiving just what we need for the sake of giving. Rabbi Shimon opened his eyes and he saw what he saw. And again, he's bringing the light of Chokhmah. And the fire surrounded the house and all of them went out. And the only ones who were left inside were Rabbi Elazar, his son, and Rabbi Abba, and the rest of the Haverim went outside. Why did they go outside? For the same reason. They didn't want to receive for themselves alone. This great light is coming. If they're not adequately prepared, if they're not ready with the order chasadim to enclose it, the light of giving to enclose it, it's better that they don't receive it. Otherwise, the chance of receiving for themselves alone is too great. That's why they went outside. Okay? Come and see. He says, he wants to know, is Rabbi Yitzchak with me? Because I promised him that he would be able to die on the same day as me. This is a story that appears in the Zohar in a different place, that one day one of his students, Rabbi Yitzchak, was going to die, and he was very concerned because he hadn't felt he'd finished his tikkun, and Rabbi Shimon helped him and said, okay, you have another so many years, and prayed for him, and you have so many more years, and but you will die when I die. So he said to him, tell him to get organized and come and sit by me. Happy is his portion, okay? Because they're going from a consciousness of where the light of God is more hidden to a consciousness where the light of God is more revealed. So they're not afraid of physical death at all. On the contrary, they are simply moving up a stage in consciousness, which I think is very lovely. Kafhei, Kam Rabbi Shimon v'yativ v'chayech v'chazdei amar an inun chavaya. Kam Rabbi Elazar v'ilon yatfu kamei zakif yadoi Rabbi Shimon u'metzalei tzaluta v'hava chadei v'amar inun chavaya dishtakachu bei idra izdamnun chacha nafku kulhu v'ishtaru Rabbi Elazar berei v'Rabbi Abba v'Rabbi Yehuda v'Rabbi Yossi v'Rabbi Chia ad hachi al Rabbi Yitzchak amar lo Rabbi Shimon kama ye'ut chelkecha kama chedu bai l'istosfa lach b'hayoma Yativ Rabbi Abba batak katfoi v'Rabbi Elazar kamei. Rabbi Elazar arose and he sat down. Okay, so first he's standing, then he's sitting. Okay, and again, this is talking about spiritual levels. When he's standing up, that means he's all 10 sfirot. Okay, receiving the full light of his madrega, which is chokhmah. Then he's sitting down, which means he's giving up all except the last 6 sfirot, which means he's receiving only for the sake of giving. So only receives, not the full amount, but only what he's able to receive for the sake of giving, the middle line. Okay? And he laughs and he's happy. Why is he happy? Because he's receiving God's light in the right way. And that way the light of God can be revealed beautifully, in balance. Okay? Not in a way that's going to cause judgments and suffering. And he says, where are the companions? So Rabbi Elazar got up and brought them in, and they sat before him. Why? Because now it's all in balance, okay? There's no danger they can receive for themselves alone, because it's receiving only for the sake of giving. Rabbi Shimon raised up his hands, and he prayed a prayer. And what is his hands? His vessels of receiving. He raises them up. They'll be only for the sake of giving. and he prayed a prayer, and he was joyful, okay? And he said, these are the companions who were with me in the previous time when he was sick. That was Idra Rabbah. Yizdamnu kan, let them all be here. All of them went out. And again, this moving in and moving out is very much to do with the spiritual levels and the things that they were experiencing in their consciousness. And who was left? Rabbi Elazar, his son, and Rabbi Abba, and Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Chia. And then comes in Rabbi Yitzchak, and Rabbi Shimon said to him, how beautiful is your portion. How happy that you will join to you on this day. And Rabbi Abba sat behind his shoulders. Shoulders in the language of Kabbalah is the Order Hasidim. And Rabbi Elazar sat in front of him. Okay, that's what we have time for today. It was a very, very, very grateful to Rabbi Gottlieb with all my heart for the wonderful learning that he gave us for Lag BaOmer this year. Really, really, really grateful. Yes.
That's amazing. Like to be, I've never been aware of how they moved up and down the levels during this meeting, moving in and out. And yeah, it's incredible that they were aware of what level they were on and what they could take and what they couldn't take and what their vessels could receive and what their vessels couldn't receive. Yes. It's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. They had so much awareness, and to have that type of awareness, we need the godly light. Absolutely.
It's amazing.
I think also that this is what Rabbi Gottlieb meant, that a true teacher not only gives you the instructions, but he also gives you the energy and the strength to see who you really are and to give it, and so that we can do what we can do. And I think you can see this, how Rabbi Shimon was giving to the Talmidim, giving to the Haverim.
Incredible.
They had that awareness, yeah.
And all this is going on in all the stories that you read throughout the Zohar.
Right.
They're talking about them traveling from town to town, sitting down, getting up, meeting this person, that person. All these are experiences that developing their vessels.
Yes, absolutely. Wow. Absolutely.
Oh, man. Wow. It's incredible.
It was, I was so grateful to Rabbi Gottlieb. I really am. An amazing Peirushim Shim that he's given on Lag BaOmer. Really fantastic.
And we could use it for ourselves in our, to develop our own awareness of what's going on and what the work that they had to do in order to refine themselves. And we have to do the same work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's true that we do live in a difficult generation. Okay. As the generations get closer to the time of Mashiach, there's more and more chaos. Okay. So
harder to see.
It's hard to see. It's hard to see. Yeah. And so we really, 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 on the other hand, there's more chaos. But on the other hand, the light of God is more present than ever before. Never have we had these type of teachings. This teaching that Rabbi Gottlieb gave in Netanya just blew me away completely. And I wrote him, I asked him for the Peirush, because he mentioned it on one of his shiurim that he'd done it. And by email, I get this incredible teaching back. I can't believe it.
Oh, man. Wow. It's like
the speed of
another
light.
level. It's another level of revelation.
Yeah. So on the one hand, the darkness of our times is really dark and really chaotic. On the other hand, the light is really pushing us as much as possible to discover what's inside us, pray to God, and come close. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for sharing this.
My pleasure, with all my heart.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I really want to really thank you guys for being present physically. I know you can pick it up on YouTube, but I truly appreciate the people who come physically also. I don't think I would be able to give the same shiur if there wasn't anybody there. The fact that I know that you guys are present physically makes a huge difference to me. So I really want to thank you for that.
Our pleasure.
Okay.
Shabbat shalom, Yedida.
Shabbat shalom.
Thank you very much.
You're very,
Shabbat
very
shalom.
welcome. Lovely.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Shabbat
Bye-bye.
shalom.
Shabbat shalom.